Welcome back to another Sly Cooper video. So, someone mentioned something pretty interesting in the comment section when I made the video talking about another way of Sly going back home. The comment had to do with the ending scene of Sly 3. I actually never thought of this. Let's go over the comment. Beyond Yost posted the following. Hi Vivi, I think that Sanzaru might have misinterpreted the ending of Sly 3. They made a game where the gang travels backwards in time, even though, judging by what Bentley says in the end of Sly 3, it should have been a journey forward in time. I quote, "So while this may be the end of our adventures together, it could be the start of something even bigger. Time will tell, literally, because I'm building a time machine to find out." Here he indicates that he wants to travel forward in time to find out if this really was the end of their adventures. Judging by this, Sanzaru screwed up pretty badly. Even though there's nothing that can be done about this now, it could be an interesting discussion video, where you discuss how the series, and Sly 4 in particular, would have evolved from the end of the third game. Hope you see this. Beyond Yost, thank you for sharing. I hope I did not mispronounce your username. I tried, okay? Why not play the scene for you guys? Let's go.
So while this might be the end of our adventures together, it could be the start of something even bigger. Time will tell. Literally. 'Cause I'm building a time machine to find out.
So while this may be the end of our adventures together, it could be the start of something even bigger. Time will tell, literally, because I'm building a time machine to find out. Question: why did Bentley even want to build a time machine? I found that very unexpected, like, why? What's it for, really? The way he says it could be the start of something new. Time will tell, literally. He's pretty much implying that he will go into the future to see if all of this is the start of something bigger. But why? I guess it's just for fun. Bentley knows that he's very smart. I guess he wanted to put that to the test. Now the user mentioned that Sanzaru Games completely screwed up, that they misunderstood the ending of Sly 3. Did they really do the opposite? Or did they just decide to go with the idea of the time machine? Considering the fact that Sanzaru Games has actually played all the games, judging by their interviews, they had to know what Bentley meant. Realistically, as the same user mentioned later on, it's more difficult. Going in the future, what's the point? Going back in time in the past guarantees worlds, characters, different settings and all that, right? It's easier. Sure, the same thing could be said for the future, going to different timelines. Maybe meeting their children, Sly's children. But what's the point? What will you do in the future? What, you'll get captured because you're a time traveler? Okay, but what's gonna happen later once you escape? The same thing's gonna happen? Why would a villain want to be a villain in the future? If they alter the future, going back to the past might undo it completely, rendering it useless. Would traveling to the future make an interesting game? I don't see it. It's not that I'm defending Sanzaru for going back to the past and meeting the ancestors. That's actually a clever idea. Meeting the ancestors, going to the past. I mean, going to the future. What's so interesting about that? Bentley just wanted to see what's going to happen in the future. But once he does so, what's next? What kind of villain would decide to cause havoc in the future? I think it's a better idea to go to the past and alter the future that way. In my opinion, it's not that Sanzaru Games misinterpreted what Bentley said. They actually thought of the idea, okay, if the characters move to the future, will that be interesting enough to make a game? They perhaps thought of the villain, what would they do in that timeline? What's the point, like I've said 5 times in the video. And I really like the concept of Sly 4. Yes, Bentley was building a time machine, but they decided to use that and explore the other ancestors, which is something I enjoyed a lot. Yes, Bentley's intention was to move to the future, just to take a look, but what for? Can they actually make a plot out of that? But hey, at the end of the day, this is just my opinion. Maybe they did misinterpret it, or maybe not. I don't know if some of you have ever played Final Fantasy 13-2, but have you ever heard of the phrase, if you change the future, you change the past? Now what is that supposed to mean? Usually it's, if you change the past, you change the future, right? This is what I'm thinking about if Sanzaru Games had decided to go with Bentley's intention, to move to the future. If they had gone with that, here's what I'm thinking. Let me show you guys a line. Now I'm sure many of you will probably get confused and will not understand what I'm about to say, but I will try. Bentley moves to the future. He does something and the future changes, right? With that future comes the past. Once Bentley goes back in time, in a way we can say he has to make sure that the past, which was attached to that future, has to happen. So in other words, Bentley has to make sure that that past happens. For whatever happened in the future happens. If Sanzaru Games had gone with what Bentley had actually said in Sly 3, don't you think that it would have been even more complex than Sly 4? Basic time travel, changing the past, changing the future, future and all that, don't you think that some fans somewhere out there will complain and say, "This game is full of plot holes. What is this?" I'm not saying Sly Cooper 4 doesn't have any plot holes. Any game with time travel will have plot holes in some sort of way. Time travel is just very messy, and like I've said a million times on this channel, they should end the aspect of time travel in Sly Cooper 5, because it's not the nature of the series. So, would you have wanted to see something as complicated as this in Sly 4? No. So, am I completely against what Sanzaru decided to go with for Sly Cooper 4? Nope. I really like the idea of meeting the ancestors, and it's a shame that people are completely trashing Sly 4, but it is what it is, right? If the villain, let's say, hated the Coopers, how would he or she change their fate by going to the future? I'd imagine them going to the past. Now, in the comment section, it was explained by someone that Sanzaru simplified time travel in Sly 4. This was mentioned in an interview somewhere. I wasn't able to find the interview. If you can, I would appreciate it if you would point it out in the comment section. I guess, yeah, they simplified it, going back to the past fixing itself, how the ancestors disappeared in the end on their own. Technically speaking, Sly interacted with his ancestors. Don't you think that would have caused some butterfly effects? Yes, in my opinion. But I guess Sanzaru Games went with the idea that the past will fix itself. But was the future altered in some sort of way? Yes. The paradox. He had forged some documents in the past and made sure that those documents would appear in the future to give him power. Another thing, Sanzaru Games did not have to go with time travel. If there weren't any time travel in Sly 4, what would the game have been like? Sly Cooper 2? Perhaps. Now I know what you guys, those especially who are trashing Sly Cooper 4, are thinking right now. Dude, are you serious? Sanzaru Games making a game as similar as Sly 2. Keep on dreaming. I'm not talking about the story, the writing and stuff like that. I'm just talking about the concept. These huge hub worlds, a villain in each episode, and the same overall formula. Sly 4, if that were the case, it would have been considered just another Sly Cooper game. Here's what I'm thinking. The developer for the next game, hopefully, should have the following mindset. What can make the next Sly Cooper game everyone's favorite? We have to think like that. Let's not change the mechanics, nothing at all. Let's just add a few little extras and make sure that this brand new Sly Cooper game can differentiate itself from the others in a good way. If you have a game that's too similar to the previous one, you're just gonna end up having fans being like, oh, they're running out of ideas. They could have done something much better, right? Take what make the series great and add a lot more to it by making sure that it doesn't take away the true essence of the series. Guys, have you ever thought of this? How would Sucker Punch have handled time travel? A bunch of games with time travel, like I said, have plot holes. How are we so sure that Sucker Punch would have avoided those plot holes? Explain that to me. Would they even have gone with time travel despite what Bentley said? That could have just been left as Bentley's hobby, nothing much. What I'm thinking is, Sucker Punch had ended Sly Cooper with Sly 3, and later they decided to try something new, Infamous. I'm not saying because they ran out of ideas they decided to move on. They decided to move on because they wanted to try something new. But did they have ideas in the back of their minds for another Sly Cooper game? Perhaps not. Imagine if Sly 4 was without time travel, made by Sucker Punch. I feel like they would have to force ideas. If they had ideas for the next game, I think they would have worked on it eventually, even if they were busy with Infamous. Think about that. But hey, going with the idea that they did not have ideas for the next game, maybe they would have come up with ideas eventually. So there's also that to consider, right? Okay guys, after I finished editing the video, I actually thought of an idea which would make the scenario of Bentley, or at least the whole gang going to the future, actually work. They could like meet this villain in the future, and in order to stop this guy, they would have to go back to the past and undo everything. And think of this. How would his time machine work? You need an artifact to go back to the past. We learned that in Sly Cooper 4. Now how would he find an object from the future? How would he time travel to the future without that object, right? Here's what I'm thinking. That whole Penelope plot twist could have been easily avoided. Bentley and Penelope could have worked together and they could have designed the time machine Penelope designed in Sly 4, which did not require an object. But think again, if they did stumble upon this villain in the future, would they actually face him or would they quickly go to the past and undo it? I mean, they could simply find the the van and just go back to the past and avoid this future villain. But just for the sake of gameplay, I'd imagine a boss battle. I know I said what's the point in the video, but I'm like just sitting here and laughing right now. Why didn't I think of this before? It can actually work. And to make it even more simple, Bentley's time machine could have just been a basic time machine. Sanzaru could have made it so it didn't need an artifact. During the video, I was like, why would a villain escape to the future and cause havoc in that timeline? What if the gang meets the villain in the future? And in order to stop that guy, they would have to change the past. So the whole idea of changing the future, changing the past, it actually fits. The gang goes to the future, they encounter this new threat. The past already exists, but they have to change it, so they go back. But the problem with this idea is, we as fans are going to ask the following question. Okay, they end up in the future, they see this new threat. Why get involved in that? Why not quickly go back to the past, right? How would the developer avoid that question? Unless they get captured immediately. Okay, here's the thing. They need to get involved in that mess to find out what caused the villain to do such a thing. And for those of you wondering if Sly's kid follows his legacy, they could have actually implemented this idea. Sly working with his actual son, who's in his teenage years. Or daughter, just to make it different. They could have avoided this whole situation, Sly ending up in ancient Egypt, right? No cliffhangers. But I can't help but feel there's still a problem with this idea. Look, if they go to the future, handle this villain, alright, they go back to the past to put a stop to it, but what will happen to them who time travel to the future with the villain no longer being present? I don't want to make this confusing for you guys, but technically, if the team goes back to the past where they're not present, then what will happen to the gang who actually time traveled before the time they ended up in? Okay, let me bring up this line again. The red line represents the gang, for example, going to the future. They meet this villain, they deal with him or her. Alright, to actually put a stop to this person, they go back to the past and they undo it. That represents the blue line. Now what's going to happen to that red dot on the right? That's going to affect the blue line. For those of you who watch TV shows with like time travel and stuff like that, maybe you might understand what's happening with these lines, but I feel like this video is already messy, so I'm gonna stop here. So in summary, the approach Sanzaru Games took, I think, was the simplest. I'm gonna leave it at that. If they don't stop the villain, then they're going to go back to the past and actually experience it in the future, normally, without time travel involved. But other than that, guys, this is it for the video. So as usual, if you have any questions, thoughts, or anything like that, leave it in the comments section below. And as always, I've been Vivi, and thank you for watching.